Okay, so we've expanded on classes. Let's go a little bit deeper and look at setting up an inventory within our player class to show you the concept of sort of storing multiple items within a class. So let's get into that. Okay, so continuing on, just before we go into some more advanced examples, I'm just going to save this and run it. So you can sort of see that it's still working. A known player and a sword. And if I change the constructor to just be, Tom Smith. Oops, save that. Tom Smith has been executed, and we know that we're not getting an error because sword is showing each time. And we can even pass the level as well. So calling that third constructor, I'll change that just to be different to 7, save it and run it. And we've still got Tom Smith and sword. So you can see that the 3 separate constructors were being executed. I went through all 3, and that common code is still being executed for all of them. And the default weapon was being called, was being set, which was our sword. So just to clarify then, we can override this and set a new weapon. So we could do that outside of the class. So we could clean this up a bit. Okay, now we can put in here, we can put weapon, my axe equals new weapon, gold shine axe, and maybe that does 15 and it's got 50 hit points. Then what we can do is put Tim dot set weapon my axe. So we've told the Tim class, or the object I should say, that this object of the player class, that it's now got a new weapon. And again, we should be able to copy this and paste it. We should see that when it first starts, it'll be sword, and then it'll get changed to an axe. We'll save that and we'll run it. And it's changed to the gold shine axe as well. So there you go. That's one way of accessing an object sort of within a class, so to speak. Now that's great where the player has got one weapon and one and only one weapon, but what about if we had something like the concept of an inventory, for potions or rings or armor and those types of things, where there could be many items. Obviously we don't want to have to create one variable for each type of item, because we won't know in advance how many items we have. We don't want to put, in other words, this is something we wouldn't want to do. We wouldn't want to set this up. We wouldn't want to have that, and so that, in other words, the player can have a maximum of 4 weapons at one time. That would be severely limiting and also a waste of memory. So there's a much better way of doing that. And let's talk about doing that now, and that's using the concept of an array list. But first things first, we're going to create yet another class, and we're going to call that an inventory item. So we're going to create a new class. Oops. New class. Inventory item. I could have just called it item, but just to be clear, I'm calling it an inventory item. Now what we're going to introduce here is obviously the name. We're going to have the name of the inventory item, but let's also have a type. So we want to type to know, look, is it a potion? Is it a ring? Or is it some armor? We want to be able to break it down so we know what type of item each and every item we've got is. So we're going to use something called an enum. And an enum is just a way of just having multiple choices for a type. So we can type enum, or let's just call it item type. And then we type in our choices in uppercase, generally, potion, ring, or armor. And we can say that they are our 3 choices, and I'm using those brackets, as you can see there, those braces. Now if you are working along and you find you get an error like this, and that says something like it doesn't really recognize what an enum is, what you need to do is go into your preferences within Eclipse. Okay, go into Java and go into compiler. Now what you need to do here is make sure that compiler compliance level is set to 1.5. Now by default I believe Android Developer Tools might set it to 1.4. We're going to actually apply it, and we're going to click OK to that, which means we're okay with using enums. Once we do that, and it should go away and it should save for us. You can see that's now saved correctly. And that's just got to do with the version of Java, version 1.5 brought out and started using enums. But because we had 1.4 in the preferences, it wasn't allowing us to use it. So we've got that going now. So we've got our item type. So that's the 3 types that we're going to have in our items. So in other words, an item that's going to be in our inventory has to either be a potion, a ring, or armor. So we're going to have a private item type. We call it item type because that's what we've defined above. And I'm just going to call it type. Then private, string, we'll just have the name. So in each inventory item that we've got will ultimately just have a type and the name. And same deal, we're going to set a constructor. And I'm just going to click OK. You can see it's the item type, even though it's an enum, it can be used just as any other type can. And same for the getters. Getters and setters, I should say. Select all, save. So that's our base inventory item. So every particular item that's going to be in the player's inventory is going to have a type and a name assigned to it. So I'm going to save that. So now we want to go back to the player class. So at the moment we've got a single item defined, but we haven't got that inventory sort of set up, which one class, player class, in the player class. So what we need to do here is put private. Now we can't just put inventory item or inventory item like that. I mean, we can do it, but what that means is we can only have one item. And obviously we want to have many items. So we're going to use the concept of an array list. So we're going to type array list. An array list, and what we're doing, we're using a less than sign, and we're telling Java the array list, which is sort of like an array. It's a storage area for more than one item. And we're saying with the less than and the greater than sign, this is the type that's going to be in that array list. And that should be lowercase inventory items to be consistent. And I probably want an import. Going to import, and that's going to be happy now. So we've now got a place to store more than one item. So what we then want to do is we want to initialize that, and in the empty player we're going to put inventory items equals new array list, which was of course inventory items. Or inventory item, I should say, because it's the single version of that class, and we still need to have the brackets. So in other words, we're saying create a new array list, so it starts allocating some space. Now it doesn't, we haven't told it how many slots or how much memory or how many items. It handles all that complexity automatically. All we're saying here is we want a new array list, we want a new place to store all our items in. When we haven't told you yet, we'll tell you when we start adding items. So that's the definition, which is going to be called to create that space. So that's created sort of more the definition, and it's ensured that it's not null and it's not going to come up with any errors. Okay, so we set that up, and again, because we put it in the base constructor, it's going to be executed each time. So we then need to have a getter and a setter. So I'll go through and do our getters and setters, inventory items. And again, this is where it's good sometimes to use those tools inbuilt to Eclipse or Android Studio if you're using that, because it writes some of this code out for us. And you can see here that our getter, it's telling the compiler, I'm going to give you an array list of inventory items, of which we've defined above if you use the getter, and the setter is going to replace it. Now, if you think about it, probably this method here, this set method, is something we wouldn't want to use, because what we want to do is we want to actually get the player class to retain control over the inventory management. So we don't want some other part of our game to be storing the inventory and sending us all the inventory items. What a better solution would be to comment this out, or comment that out for now. We should really have a method which enables us to add an inventory item or to remove one, and then perhaps to also check if one exists, type in and send a name and see whether it exists, and also to return a list of all the inventory items. Now, of course, we've got the list of all inventory items already, so we don't need that. But the other ones, what we can do is we can create a definition. And let's call it public. So let's instead set a method that adds a single item. So we're going to put public void, so that we don't need to return anything. And we'll call it add inventory item. We're going to pass the class inventory item. And what we need to do then is we need to add that single inventory item that's been passed here to our array list, to our list up here, into this variable. So to do that, you type inventory items dot add inventory item. And it will go ahead and create that, or add that I should say, to our array list. And likewise for deletion, what we could do there with deletion, we could put public, let's return a boolean to tell us whether it's succeeded or not, and we can have public delete, or maybe a better word in game terms might be drop inventory item. Now, if we just went ahead and put inventory items, you're probably guessing what we need to type here. Inventory items dot remove inventory item. And that will work if there's one there. But how do we know that that inventory item actually exists? We may not know that that exists. So it's better to do a test to see whether it exists first before we try and delete it. So we can put if this dot inventory items dot contains inventory item, so only if we can find it will we remove it. And if we do remove it, we're going to return true to say that yes, we did remove it. But if the code execution, there's a space there, fails, if it gets down to here, it means we couldn't find it, so we're going to return a false. So the way it works is, if the inventory items contains the item that we've sent to it, we're going to delete it and then return true to say, yes, we did drop it successfully. If it passes through here, in other words, it couldn't find the inventory item, we're going to return false. If we didn't have that if test and we sent an item that didn't exist, the program would crash. All right, so I hope that sort of made a bit of sense. So we've got our three methods we need now. We've got the ability to list, return all the items. We've got the ability to add an item and to drop one. So let's test this out. Save that. Go back to demo. So let's try creating a new inventory item. So we're going to put inventory item. We'll call it the red potion equals new inventory item. So it's item type, I should say. Item type dot potion. And the name, we'll call it the red potion. And now we're going to add that. So we're going to go tim.add inventory item red potion. So what we're going to do now is go through our list of inventory items and print them out. So to do that, we need to get all the inventory items. So we're going to put array list. This is outside of the class. Inventory item. All items equals tim dot get inventory items. So we're asking, and again I just need to add the import. We're asking the player class that we've defined, the object tim, to give me a list of all the items that are currently in the player's inventory. And then we're going to type for inventory item item, colon, all items. And what that's going to do is loop through for all the items, inventory items that it finds. And for each one, it's going to automatically create a variable called item, which has got the inventory item. So from there, we should be able to do system.out, out.println, print item dot get name. So in this case, it should really only return one item, which is our red potion. So I'm going to save that. And if we run it, you can see down here, I'll get rid of some of these other prints as well to ensure things aren't quite so messed up. And likewise for the weapon, which we don't need at the moment. I'll save that, run it again. We've now got a red potion. So that's going through the list, and of course there is only one item. But let's add another one. And I'm going to show you another way of adding something. If you're adding something and you don't need to retain the value of the class after, you can do something like this. Tim.add inventory item, new inventory item, item type dot, let's say it's an armor, and we'll say it's called +3 chest armor. Now you can see the difference between the two there. The first one, we still did the same, well in both cases we did the same call to create a new inventory item class, or create an object of that class, but the difference here is this first one we assigned a variable called red potion, so we could still refer to that red potion, whereas here this automatically creates the new class, adds it to the inventory item, and then discards it. So it's just a quick way of sort of saving a bit of memory. If you're not going to use it, there's no point sort of holding on to that variable. But of course what that means is we can't at the moment access this +3 chest armor because we didn't save it in a variable. So we save that and run it. We've now got red potion and +3 chest armor. So let's just create a couple more. So again, I'll go back and we'll make it this one. We'll call this one a ring. We'll call it a ring of protection +2. And then get rid of the armor again, and let's have it set up another potion. And we'll call that one the invisibility potion. Couldn't spell it. Okay, so we've got quite a few items there now. I'll save that and run it. And you can see it's quite happily adding those to the array list. And I mean, it's not infinite, but you can have a lot of objects, a lot of items, and it's quite happily working through them, as you can see. Now, what we can do, of course, is we can remove them. And remember before we talked about doing that. So if I, up here, let's try and remove one of the items. Firstly, let's try and remove a bogus item, one that we know doesn't exist. So I'm going to put Boolean was deleted equals Tim dot drop inventory item red potion. So let's see whether we can do that. We'll put okay, and let's just print that out, true or false. System dot out dot println was deleted. Now that should return false. That should return true, because I was going to do it the other way around first. So let's just do that. Let's temporarily create a new item that we know doesn't exist. And we'll call it the blue potion. Blue, and we'll go back to here. Blue. Get it right in a minute, Tim. Okay, blue. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try deleting an item, the blue potion, which of course we know for sure hasn't been added because we haven't tried to run the add inventory item to it. So if we run that, oops, save it. Oops, I've got an error here. What have I done? Oops, I deleted that by mistake. Boolean was deleted equals Tim dot drop blue potion. Not sure how I did that anyway. Okay, save again and run it. False. and we've still got the red potion, the +3 chest armor, ring of protection +2, and invisibility potion. But then if we change this to red potion, and run it, that's now true, and you can see red potion has removed itself from the list, and we've only left with the +3 chest armor, ring of protection +2, and invisibility potion. Okay, I think we've got to the end of this video. It's probably quite a bit to digest. So go back and watch the video a few extra times if need to, and go through step by step. It'll make more sense the more times that you sort of go through it. And if you are watching this and aren't following along, I do suggest you go back and actually type this in. What I found was when I was learning to program, being able to type it in rather than just reading it, because back then there wasn't really much in the way of video tutorials, but typing it in seems to solidify the information and make it a lot easier for you to understand. So I certainly recommend you don't just watch, but you also act and be typing this in. Alright, well I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you back with the next Java tutorial.